Wow. Have you ever wondered how stepmoms actually live through it? And when it's difficult, what do they do? And is it ever easy? And if it is difficult, what should you do? Well, these are the kind of things we're going to talk about today. So if you know someone who's a stepmom, if you're not one, tell them that they'll get some really good insights here today with my guest, Kathy Hammond. Stay tuned. Welcome to Emotional Savvy, the Relationship Help Show. I'm Dr. Roberta Shaler. If you're ready to increase your confidence in conversations and conflict, deepen your self-awareness, expand your connectedness, and enrich your relationship with yourself and other humans you care about, and even those you wish you didn't, you're in the right place. Enjoy today's episode. So today we're going to talk about something that we haven't really spoken about in depth before. So I'm very excited to talk about the whole business of what I'm calling today stepmommery. When you step into a situation created by other people and you fall in love and fall into it. So welcome to the program, Kathy.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
Well, I'm very excited about this, and I love the title of your book, How to Kill Your Husband's Ex, Attorneys, and Then Some, Ass-Kicking Advice for Stepmoms. Well, that got everybody's attention. It certainly got mine. And I was reading in your bio that you have had 27 years of experience being a stepmom, so that is something.
Yes, it is. It's quite an accomplishment sometimes.
Yes, and it looks like you're still quite capable of sitting up and taking nourishment.
Yes.
So that's a good thing. Let me tell everybody about you. It's important to people to know Kathy is a 27-year-old, don't we wish? Nice. A 27-year veteran of being a stepmom, as I said. And she's the author of this recently released book called How to Kill Your Husband's Ex, Attorneys, and Then Some. Ass-Kicking Advice for Stepmoms. And when she first became a stepmom, guess what? She wasn't prepared. I don't know if anybody ever is, are they? But she just wasn't prepared for the assault that was about to happen, and that can certainly happen, especially if you happen to have any hijackals going around. And she naively thought that being a stepmom would involve only her and her husband and the stepkids. Boy, was she wrong. The ex, the in-laws, sundry other relatives, and I'm sure everybody and their friend had something to say about it. And it was like living under a critical microscope. So I'm sure that that's the truth. And I want to just say something that I noticed when I read your book, Kathy. Mm-hmm. Girl, what were you thinking marrying somebody after 7 weeks?
Well, he certainly swept me off my feet. And fortunately, I had guessed correctly that it was the absolute right person, right time, right everything.
Well, I'm glad you were right, because, in my world of hijackals want to sweep you off your feet because they can only pretend to be wonderful for so long.
Right.
So when I read that 7 weeks, I thought, what's going to happen with that? But then after I read 27-year veteran, I could breathe again. So you put a big word in the title of your book. I bet you thought about this long and hard. You put the word how to kill.
Right.
So tell us about that process.
Well, first, it was my sister's idea for the title. She said it just captured everything because she herself had been through a few of these things. And it was so powerful, but yet the word itself was not what people initially think. The word kill has a number of meanings. And in this case, it really was a very positive meaning.
Tell me the positive meaning of to kill.
Well, it actually means to neutralize. And that really was the focus of the book. And really, because I wrote it so that stepmoms really understood, that they can, take control of a situation. They don't have to get embroiled in all of any of the drama of anyone else's drama, and that they can, in doing so, neutralize anyone who's giving them a difficult time. So that was how that all came together.
Well, I love that because I shy away from using the term to kill, but to neutralize sounds a bit like a stun gun. So I'm okay with that.
Yes. Or even more so that it's to make it nil, to have no impact, versus to even be an aggressive term, because it really isn't intended to. This book really, I wrote it for stepmoms really to maintain their sanity through the process. And so so that's the word kill on that.
Well, I think anything that makes us neutral, that can cause us to stay in the middle line, as opposed to getting way off in either direction emotionally. If we can just stay in a neutral place and just the facts, ma'am, when you're in a difficult situation like this, that can help you a great deal. Because, I can't imagine for a moment after 7 weeks coming in and taking that on, but yay, hats off to you. But, what was the very first clue that you had that you just might have been in a little more difficult situation than you thought?
It was actually, it wasn't just that I got married after 7 weeks, but I married and then moved across country where my husband was living, where he had his two sons. And it was we had driven across, we took my car across country. And so we had driven across, and we arrived at like 1 a.m. from our journey across the country from California to Nashville. And then at 1 o'clock in the following, that afternoon, 12 hours later, I received a phone call at the house from the ex, and she immediately launched into, well, I'm going to tell you when you're going to take the children and so on and so forth. I had never met her. I'd never even spoken to her. So it was just kind of odd. So that I sensed at that moment, there might be some issues coming up. And I was a, pretty good judge of character. So
yeah, that was a little clue. You just got here, I'm on you like white on rice,
Right.
So would you say that, without a psychological diagnosis, but would you say that maybe the ex is just a titch toxic?
I don't know that I would use that word or even describe her as such. I think at that time we were all much younger. It was completely unexpected, and people didn't have time to get used to me in 7 weeks. And plus I was living across the country. While my husband and I were going about our business, and just enjoying everything, the others, suddenly they're involved in my life as well, and with me without knowing anything about me. So I think it was probably more, I'm going to say, curiosity and fear. And I wanted to be really, empathetic toward her, in that here's a strange woman who's now spending time with her children and she knows nothing about me.
So I think that's a fear of many, many people, that there's going to be someone come in, they're going to be taking the role when in the mother's absence, and I want you to be a clone of me, preferably, and do it my way, and then all will be good. But sometimes, there are toxic exes, and because I talk about that a lot, I just wanted to ask that question. So I'm glad that you could see it for the fear and concern that she had, and probably she was afraid of losing her boys, and wondering who she's handing them off to, of course, because she didn't know her well. So there were a lot of opportunities for very swift learning curves, I guess.
Yeah, I think too that it may not start out toxic, but because of all the underlying emotions, that it can become that. and can happen very rapidly, as you know, we had unfortunately experienced. So yeah, that is one thing that I was not prepared for that part of it. You know, I was a little Pollyannish when I walked into everything.
Well, we're young. We've got a nice rosy picture of what's possible. We're in love. We're having an
Right.
adventure. We're jumping into the deep end and rushing off across country to marry a man we hardly know. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. But I just want to say, for those of you listening who know that I talk about hijackals all the time, that it is really important not to go very quickly if in most situations when you're marrying, because if they have children and if they have an ex, who knows what you're jumping into. So I'm just delighted to hear that it didn't feel toxic to you in the beginning, Kathy, but for many people, being swept off your feet and saying, I can handle a stepmom thing, may just not be wise. So a little longer, a little more caution, a little whip off those rose-colored glasses so you won't miss the red flags, right?
Absolutely. And in fact, in my book, I even talk about really considering what you're doing all together. I feel very blessed, with my husband, that we've just had, we have an amazing marriage, but I've seen too many times where that's just not the case. And if you're going to participate in something like this, it's like you have to be prepared. But I still was not prepared, and I got sucked into a number of situations that I think I could have probably handled better. Had I had the advice that's in my book now, when I did all of this, I would have approached things much more differently. I probably would have put the brakes on initially and kind of eased into all of this. But for whatever reason, we didn't. And so now there's a book as a result of it.
Well, it's always wonderful when you can leave a breadcrumb trail to say, hey, this is a more direct way to walk this pathway, and let me show you where all the potential stepping stones and stumbling blocks are. It's a great thing. My guest today is Kathy Hammond, and she's written this wonderfully titled book, How to Kill Your Husband's Ex-Attorneys and Then Some, and Ass-Kicking Advice for Stepmoms. You can find it at Kathy Hammond Books with an S.com. Kathy Hammond, Kathy with a K, Hammond with two M's, and book with an S on the end.com. So let's just get into the thick of it. When you get into any relationship, and particularly one that has children and an ex involved, and let's just keep our thoughts there. Mm-hmm. There is one thing that often comes up faster than you ever thought, aside from the kids, and that is when there are kids involved and an ex involved, there is money involved. Mm. What kind of stumbling block can you eradicate with some good advice as to how to handle the money piece?
If we could have turned back the clocks here on this, one of the things that I would have done and encouraged my husband to do is to sit down every year with his ex and really look at what the children's expenses are going to be for that year, what extra things are going to be needed. Things get expensive, and especially as the kids get older, their needs are changing. So when my husband had his original orders drawn for child support and all that. And, and even at that time, I really thought it was pretty light, he had other expenses involved with this, but direct money going to the mom, it seemed like, yes, there could be more. And of course she was earning, she did quite well, but it was, if there's going to be sometimes pressure on the one parent who's receiving the support for things like prom dresses, or helping with insurance, auto insurance, or a special camp, or something that something the kid wants to get involved in.
Sure.
And and if the parents were together, they would certainly have figured this out on their own, together, and then make things happen. So there's no reason why that should stop just because there's a court order. And then, but from a financial standpoint, it could be a lot less costly if by doing it this way, because if you gave an extra $1,000 to do something for the child, instead of being dragged back into court and getting something for the life of the order, which could go for years, you're really coming out much better. And it again neutralizes the situation. Now you can't stop someone who, once they may say, yes, I'll take that extra money, and then they still go back and sue for more. You can't stop that. But if you can take some of those steps and see how you might be able to help, and especially if the mom, the ex, is, struggling a little financially, that this would help. One thing that we also did, and I would do, is I would buy additional clothes for the kids, because they're outgrowing their clothes. And so it was just to help in the process. But some just say, nope, that's my order. I'm paying X amount. And then now you've got somebody getting their back up, the ex, on the other end, because they're struggling. And so these are some of the things that people can do to be able to minimize the angst that is generally in some of these situations.
Well, I think you gave us a clear understanding that you were not in a hijackal situation, because a hijackal situation will be that one that you described, the one where I give you the extra $1,000 and it's supposed to go to the prom dress and the insurance, but it went somewhere else, and now I want more, and by the way, I want more every month. And it just never ends. I mean, one of the things that happens in divorces in general, with toxic people particularly, is that you're going to become such close friends with the court, and you never wanted to be that, because there's always that next question, that next demand, that next inquiry, and it goes on and on and on, seemingly endlessly. And 18 is the magic year, but that doesn't stop the expenses, because kids go to college.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
There have been a number of situations that we had experienced where there was no appeasing, the other party. And that was another thing too that I put in my book. It's like, if you're trying to set an example for someone of like, this is how we behave decently toward one another. If that's not in them, they're not going to respond. And, and all you've done is that you've become overly involved in the situation, which is why I also stress to stepmoms, stay out of it as much as possible. Just stay out of it. And if you're able to do that, your life just may be a lot easier. Your husband's life may not be, but yours will be.
Yeah. Well, that's sort of the consequences of having serial marriages. And if he's the one that had the serial marriage, then he's got a little more fixing to do, right?
Absolutely.
But I think you bring up a really good point, because it's very difficult in many situations, not all. I've heard some wonderful stories. People who just see the new mom as a bonus mom, and now we've got more adults who love the child, and that's ideal. That's what we want. But often there is competition that comes up. So I would guess, but correct me if I'm wrong, that you would suggest that he and she work things out, that he and she have the conversations, and you be the guide on the side to him, and he goes and have the conversations as much as is possible when it's regarding money. Is that what you think?
Yes. And if stepmoms would take their cue from stepfathers, because unless the stepfather is really out there, really a bad guy, they generally stay in the background. They're not involved. And they don't write fairy tales about the wicked stepfather. It's just the wicked stepmom. And so but the less you can be involved and remain in the background, just provide guidance to your husband, the better off the stepmom is going to be. I mean, I think someone said something about where, maybe I was being a little too cynical with what I had written, and that maybe I should be focusing on the nurturing part of things, but that's not what the book was about. And that's not what stepmoms need. It's how are you going to protect yourself? Because you have an absolute right to protect yourself from being assaulted by anyone, whether it's emotionally or otherwise. And that's why when I see the stepfathers, they don't have a bad rap for the most part.
Mm. Well, I think you're absolutely right. And what I hear you saying is that stepmoms need boundaries.
Yes. And when you see that the emotional part of all of this is coming from like another woman, that's where that's coming from. Because as women, most of us, we're naturally nurturing. And so when we have a child there in our home, you want to be, kind to the child and do things and care. And that's got to drive the mom crazy, knowing that that's what's going on. Some other woman is, cuddling her child and reading a story, to them at night and so on. And they're not there. That would drive me crazy.
Well, sure, because their bond was created and they don't want to share their bond. And I don't mean that that's a conscious decision. It's actually an unconscious decision. Like, right. That's my baby. That's mine. There's a reason that we pick up our baby for the first time and smell it. We want to make sure it's ours. And yep, that's one of mine. And I know when my grandchildren were born, I had to go and smell the baby, like make sure it's ours, right? Yeah. It smells right. And I'm sure there's no difference in the smells of children, right. But it's just that thing that, okay, yeah, it's a kind of shared with other species kind of thing, like, right, okay, and they always smell so good anyway. But right. I think when a mom has created that bond, and she's created a story that how their future is going to be, and that's unraveling before her very eyes, all that future had promised. And then someone else comes into the picture and they're going to take over some of my role. And maybe they're going to take over some of my child's affection. And, there's all kinds of things, listeners, for sure, that if you didn't get a lot of love and attention or validation when you were a child, and then you had that in your relationship, and then your children and you were well bonded, and then you divorced, you were counting on that unique bonding experience to, really make you feel connected. And the thought of someone else deeply gazing into the eyes of your child and bonding is, no, I'm not sure I like that. And so it takes a much bigger woman to be able to collaborate in the child raising.
Yes.
Really does. And a woman who is secure, secure within herself and secure enough to be able to say what's so without being afraid, and to have boundaries when required, and to be able to express her feelings. Not that she's going to be best friends, perhaps, with the bio mom, but that there is respect. How do you build that respect?
I think backing off a little bit. I'm reminded of a time my husband and I were coming from California back. We were living in Florida at the time, and we were passing through the airport of the home state where my stepsons were living with their mom and her second husband. And she brought them to the airport because we were going to take them to Florida with us. And I was standing at the end of one of those long people mover things, belts, in there. And my youngest stepson, he's at the other end with his mom, and he sees me at the long end of this, and he takes off running with his little suitcase banging up against everything. And he runs and he jumps into my arms, when he sees me. And I saw her directly when that happened at the end of that, and that look on her face. And I thought, I would not want to wish that on, on my worst enemy, that she had to have felt crestfallen, because that was her son. Mm-hmm. And so, and we didn't have really a great relationship, with her. So that made it even worse, for that. So.
And not in your situation specifically, but in many situations, like I was saying earlier, you don't know the history of the bio mom that you are thinking of marrying and becoming the stepmom to her children. Right. And if she really needs the validation of her child, and her child bonds with you or even brightens when you come in the room or at the end of a people mover.
Right.
And she's seeing the back end of him, running happily toward another woman who isn't her mother. That's difficult. I'm sure that there was a really difficult moment there, psychologically, emotionally for her. And also, difficult for you to be able to express the joy at seeing the child, at the same time not wanting to seem too joyful so she wouldn't be registering that as part of her psychological makeup. It sounds like you've been very conscious and thoughtful in this process. How long did it take you to get a handle on the stepmom biz?
Oh, probably... Well, I was going to say, I don't know that you ever really get a handle on it. I mean, as far as being a stepmom or, and with my stepkids, I would say within the first year, the kids were really little when we got married. They were 3 and 4. The oldest one was just about to turn 5. So they don't remember when their parents were together. So this is normal for them, with my husband and myself. Being a stepmom, that was easy because I didn't try to be their mom. I just wanted to have fun with them when they were there. And we did. We had an enormous amount of fun. And I left any disciplining or anything, I left that up to my husband. I would just tell him, and I thought, I've got the best of both worlds here. I'm not going to be the bad guy. And, they know when they're doing something wrong. So they're going to go ahead and they're going to get punishment from their father or their mother, depending upon, what the situation was. But being my, let's see, I'm going to say, it's like, I'm not even sure what the term would be. It's like not my husband's, a wife, obviously that was good, but being connected with this other woman that she and we don't have so much in common. Not in some cases we do, but not in many things. And I think that was probably the most difficult thing to adjust to. And also too, because, you're seeing, I spoke to my husband about this the other night. It's like you're seeing, whenever we would see her all the time before when we lived in the same area, that you're seeing some woman that your husband had been with, like all the time, and that brings up a lot of stuff, and I mean, you don't, because he's all yours now. You don't want anybody else to be with him. Yeah. And so that part of it, that I don't want to say it's jealousy or anything like that, but it's just kind of raw. It's in your face a lot. And that takes a little time getting used to, as I'm sure it is for her. Mm-hmm. Seeing you all the time. And maybe that's why they pull some stunts and do different things to, upend your life.
Well, I think every situation is different. For sure, people are differently attached to their children. They have different parenting styles. They have different expectations. But did anything change in either direction, better or less good, when she remarried?
With her third marriage, it did. The second marriage, he was a different kind of stepfather. He wanted to be dad, so he was a troublemaker in a lot of ways. But her third husband, we hardly know him, and things seem to quiet down and he does really quite well. So the money, any money pressure from before was gone. So I think that helped quite a bit. But yeah, I think it was when things got easier for her that things got easier for us.
I'm sure that's true because security and stability make a big difference, right?
Yes.
I mean, none of us like to be walking in uncertain waters, and our emotions can go up and down and all around when we are feeling unstable emotionally, physically, um, spiritually, financially,
Right.
whatever it is. So I just want to put a little caveat in here for those of you who are listening and are wondering, well, what about the hijack ex? I think it's important for stepmoms to um, kind of keep a little running journal about what's going on when things go sideways, because sometimes it will happen that a hijackal X will make accusations. And if you have good notes about things, they'll say that, I never asked for them to take the children when it wasn't my week. And then, you have it documented that was so. It's not because you're trying to catch anybody out. It's just that you're trying to keep accuracy and truth front and center. So let me just say that because it's important. So you said something in your book. Now, we're talking about this great book. I love the title, so I'm going to tell you again. It's How to Kill Your Husband's Ex Attorney and Then Some, Ass-Kicking Advice for Stepmoms. And in there, you brought up a little topic that I hadn't really thought about except in the case of extreme hijackals. And you said that the ex may take you to court and depose you as part of the proceedings. Did that happen, or is that just something you wanted to put in the book?
Well, it happened to me. It's part of I mean, of course, the suit wasn't with me, but rather with my husband. And so I was deposed, and they weren't going to get really anything out of me. And so I really looked at it more as just being harassed, as well as running up my husband's legal fees.
Well, that's a big thing, and that's something that certainly happens in the case of toxic divorces. But the whole idea that the attorneys end up with more money than is there to take care of the children is a frequent occurrence, and we all need to recognize that maybe we need to chill a little if we possibly can in that direction. So before we're out of time, I want to hear what the upsides are, because we've talked about so many things that may be seen as downside potential. But what are the real upsides, Kathy, of being a stepmom?
You know, you have the possibility of having some children who later become adults, and who that you have, deep affection and and a history with, depending upon how long you've been married. I mean, I've been in my stepsons' lives for 27 years. They I mean, and they're not looking at me as like I'm some other mom in all of this, but they know that they have support in me from, I'm part of their lives that I wouldn't have been ordinarily. And, and I love my stepsons, and they, they're just, great young men now. And so, so that is a definite upside. Really, it's just the relationships, the additional relationships. And in the end, that's all we've got anyway, is our relationships.
No,
So,
it's true. And I think that the learning that you garnered and that you can share, of course, is an upside in this particular situation. But I think maybe being a stepmom, if you are an open, empathetic, good person, allows you to access some parts of yourself you wouldn't have to look at otherwise, because jealousy might arise or competition might arise and things like that. Then you have an opportunity to say, whoa, what's up with that? Why why is this happening, and is it in the best interest of the children? Am I torturing myself for no good reason? Kind of to get ourselves up to date and up to speed on our own feelings and thoughts and needs and wants.
Yes, absolutely. It can teach you to be yourself. I think we might be too tempted to twist ourselves into a different person than what we really are, when we don't need to do that. But I see a lot of stepmoms that will do that, where it's like they're not being genuine. They're not being authentic to themselves. And so I think that this gives you an opportunity, if you just kind of take a step back and say, this is who I am, warts and all. And, people are going to love me or they're going to hate me. And, it's because it's who we are. And that's what you can walk away with.
Yeah, you don't want to be walking on eggshells all the time as a stepmom. No. I mean, you have to have your own space and be respected for who you are. And if you do a little work within yourself and you realize that, hey, I'm kind of turning myself into a pretzel here, and I don't want to have anxiety in my life that's misplaced. So let me carve out my spot as a stepmom and work with my partner to make sure that we create a cohesive whole. So I'm just really excited about this conversation, and the more I read the book, the more I thought, oh, there's so many things to talk about. So thank you for being my guest.
Oh, well, thank you for having me, really. It's just been my pleasure, and really enjoyed the discussion.
Me too. So I've been talking with Kathy Hammond. You can find her at kathyhammondbooks.com. Kathy with a K, Hammond with 2 M's, and books with an S. kathyhammondbooks.com. And you want to go and read this incredible book. I'll say it one more time: How to Kill Your Husband's Ex, Attorneys, and Then Some. Ass-Kickin Advice for Stepmoms. Woohoo! And that's not because, that there's a whole lot of ass-kicking that's going on. It's that you need to be prepared. You need to know. And if somebody's walked it and can give you a little guide on the side, take it, because you need all the help that you can get. You're walking into unknown territory and new waters. So very important for you. I'm Dr. Roberta Shaler. You can find me at transformingrelationship.com. That's without an S, transformingrelationship.com. Listen to my other podcast, Save Your Sanity, Help for Toxic Relationships, if you happen to have a parent, partner, or ex that's a little bit crazy, making and causing you to question your sanity. And you can find me on YouTube at For Relationship Help, F-O-R, Relationship H-E-L-P. So much there for you. I hope this is helpful. I hope it caused you to think, I might be able to do this step parenting thing another way, whether you're a stepmom or a stepdad. So step into that, and we'll talk really soon. Take good care. Thanks for being here for today's episode of Emotional Savvy. If you want to deepen your emotional savvy, make shifts in your relationships, and enjoy life and relationships more, work with me, Dr. Roberta Shaler. Get my books, enjoy my courses, or work with me directly. You can do that by visiting forrelationshiphelp.com, F-O-R, relationship, H-E-L-P.com, and subscribe to Tips for Relationships now. Don't miss a thing. Be empowered this week with more emotional savvy.